It's a good morning to you. Welcome to Asakhe Online. My name is Zenzele and Ndebele, and this is the Breakfast Club. Today in our show, we'll be talking about the Convention on Children's Rights. Children's rights are very important in all aspects of our lives because everyone loves children, and it is important that we protect our children, also make sure that they are protected from abuse and many other things. So today I'll be talking to the Swedish ambassador. I'll also be talking to officials from the Legal Resource Foundation as well as the National Art Gallery. They'll be talking about the exhibition that is going on Wednesday at the National Art Gallery, focusing on the 30th anniversary on the celebration of the Convention of Children's Rights. So we'll hear from them how the importance of the children's rights and what Zimbabwe has done in terms of making sure that they domesticate the Convention on the Children's Rights. But we'll also learn experiences from Sweden that has been actually a champion of children's rights. So I hope you're going to enjoy this program. Not only that, you're going to learn a lot, and on Wednesday you're going to find your way to the National Art Gallery where the exhibition is happening, and this exhibition will be happening at around 5 p.m. in the evening, and I'm told it will go on for the whole month. So if you don't get a chance to go to the official opening of this exhibition on Wednesday during the month of March, find time to go and see the work of children, the different paintings and exhibitions that are happening on the at the gallery about the children's rights.
I'm very excited to be in Bulawayo, and it's always very useful for us based in Harare to see more of Zimbabwe than just Harare. So I'm very, very excited to be here. My impressions so far are very positive.
Yes, we are talking about the Convention on Children's Rights, and why is this quite an important issue for Swedish or Sweden as a country?
It has always been a very important issue for Sweden. We were one of the leading nations behind the conventions, and also one of the first countries that ratified the convention once it was adopted. So this has always been at the core of our democracy and democratic values.
So looking at the Swedish laws, I mean, do you allow, what has been the history of the children's rights? Is there any important event that happened for you to actually do these conventions? Or?
Well, I think ever since the convention has been adopted, there have been numerous examples in the years to follow. So for example, we have a well-developed paternity leave for all Swedish dads to also have equal rights as the mother to stay at home with the kids when they're very young. And it's also a child's perspective mainstreamed, not only in education and I would say explicitly by law, but also implicitly, like as a parent. I myself am a mother of 3, and this is something that I also teach my children, not then referring to necessarily to the convention, but we try in different ways to actually highlight a child's perspective and the right to speak and the right to have equal treatment.
Actually, I mean, you mentioned something interesting about the paternity leave. The few times that I've been in Sweden, I've seen men pushing trolleys in the parks, and they always say, "Wow, Swedish men are nice." I mean, is there a law which actually looks at the children's rights in Sweden? And do you find that quite helpful in bringing, because I'm looking at our society where people probably take paternity leave and go and drink. How have you managed to actually instill this culture that it is the role of the men as well to look after the children? I
mean, there are laws and there are regulations, and then there's a continuous debate, of course, on how much should the state regulate this type of parenting, for example, and equal rights to an equal time of paternity and maternity leave. But I think overall results have been very positive, and we're an example of very positive results when it comes to establishing good relations also between the child and its father, which is in our culture a very natural thing, I would say. We don't have very distinct roles in between the mother and father in the family.
But also what I've noticed, I mean, with my visits to Sweden is that if you look at weekends, it's almost like family time. Most shops and they're closed except for small grocery shops. Do you think that actually helps the family to just stay at home and focus on the family?
Yeah, maybe, perhaps that's an interesting reflection. And but I think overall, even when we go to work, we We make sure, you know, that our children are well taken care of during the day, that they've come to school or the daycare properly. And then we might leave work earlier some afternoons to go and pick up our children and spend time with them in the afternoons and in the evenings. Not only family time, but also in terms of activities and others. So the children have a large place in the role of the family.
So tell us about some of the work that the Swedish embassy is doing in Zimbabwe.
Well, in Zimbabwe, we have quite a large development cooperation in Zimbabwe. It's focused on democracy and human rights, and this is where obviously the rights of the child would fall naturally under. But I would also say we mainstream it. So we also work in the health sector and also environmental climate change. And unfortunately, if we just take the example of health or climate change, the vulnerable groups, such as women and children, are very often the most affected. So then again, you would have that perspective of the child mainstreamed, I think, throughout our work.
So you've just recently come to Zimbabwe, and I mean, as the ambassador of Sweden, looking maybe in the next 3-4 years, what's your view or what's your plan for working with the Zimbabwean people?
I think there is, first I would like to say Zimbabwe is a beautiful country, beautiful people, and very, very friendly people. And so I look forward to deepen my relations with Zimbabwean people. And through development cooperation, but also other types of cooperation, strengthen our relations. I think we have a lot to learn from each other. Obviously, I think my government is a government that underlines democracy, human rights. It's also a government with a feminist foreign policy. So I think those would be my focus areas, but there's a lot to do within these areas. So
we on Wednesday, there will be an exhibition specifically looking at the Convention of Children's Rights. I mean, why is it, for Sweden, why is it important? Why did you decide to say we're going to partner in this important exhibition?
It was important to come to Bulawayo also. First of all, I'd like to say that was also very important to us, and not only keep it to Harare. It was important for us to show, not only because this is an exhibition with photographies, but also involve children, and for them to express themselves verbally, but also, and which they're actually currently doing that now, preparing artistically. So by painting themselves, highlighting what is a family, what is a right of a child, for example, what's my right to education or to have a say and have an opinion and so on. So I'm very excited to see what the children are going to come up to.
Now, you talk about the right of education, and we find that in economies like Zimbabwe, and mostly maybe in African countries, some people struggle, to take their children to school. I mean, do you have programs that actually support the education of children?
We are not active in the, so to speak, education sector at this point, but we try to support in other ways. And as I mentioned earlier, we are focused on one of the focus areas is democracy and human rights. And underneath those areas, you would also find us being active in empowering women and children in general to take part in the society. And yes, I believe that all that we do in trying to cooperate with Zimbabwe is actually a way of helping and strengthen the democracy.
There's been an outcry in Zimbabwe when the corporate law was, corporate punishment was outlawed, and people were coming up with things like, spade the rod, spoil the child, and I believe, corporate law punishment is abolished in Sweden. Has that affected the behavior of children, that they'll get naughty because they're not beaten up?
I wouldn't know, because it wasn't allowed even when I was born. So I haven't been raised in that kind of culture or tradition, so to speak. So I'm not the right person to ask you, to answer you that, sorry. But I would hope so. I would hope that there has come something good out of that. That is one of our understandings anyway, from a Swedish point of view.
What can, in your view, what do you think Zimbabwe can learn from these conventions, and how Sweden has progressed in terms of children's rights?
I think what we have done, for example, is that it's not only at central level. We have also tried to work at local level, decentralized implementation. And as I was mentioning earlier, also the mainstreaming of this. I think the convention as such, as you know, is quite a lengthy document with different articles. And that's, of course, very good if children and adults familiarize with the document and why this convention was so important, and it still is. But then it's more, I think the most important thing is to become practical and to do concrete things. And that would span from what you teach, as I mentioned from my own case, in your own parenting and your own, if you have relations to children, but also education, obviously, at school, and then in discussions and at workplaces also, to remember the child's perspective in the work in general and in the debate in society.
Finally, what is your special message to the Zimbabweans as we celebrate this special convention on the children's rights?
My message to Zimbabwe would be to return to the document and pick out some, I don't know, 2, 3, maybe 4 articles and memorize them and try to think about what they mean and discuss them, debate.
Zimbabwe has made great strides as regards children's rights. We are a signatory of the CRC, which is the Convention on the Rights of the Child. But we have also gone a step further in domesticating the CRC, and this was done mainly through our Constitution in 2030, where you'll see various sections in the Constitution speaking to the theme of the Conventions on the Rights of the Child. I'll give you one example. If you look at our Constitution, we now have a standalone section which speaks to children's rights, and this was not there in the previous Constitution. So our 2013 Constitution is still considered fairly young, but very progressive in that aspect. And also, in addition to other laws that we have in Zimbabwe that are trying to align themselves with the provisions of the CRC, we have the Marriages Bill, which will soon be promulgated into law, which outlaws child marriages. We also have the Child Justice Bill, the Children's Act, and various pieces of legislation. So on paper, Zimbabwe is doing very, very well.
Yes, you are mentioning the issue that on paper, Zimbabwe is doing very well. I mean, in practice, what have been some of the challenges in implementing these laws?
All right. Well, some of the major challenges that are arising in implementing the laws arise from the fact of realignment. If you look at the time that the Loveness Mzuri judgment was handed over in the courts, outlawing child marriages, until now we don't yet have a clear format in terms of how do you then criminalize it, because that law is still not yet fully law. So that has caused a bit of problems. Then also the realignment process, I'm sure you've heard about that, because we have to have all laws that deal with children aligned to the 2013 Constitution, and that process is taking longer than usual. So those have been some of the main challenges as regards the full domestication and the full adoption of the CRC in Zimbabwe.
I think when it comes to children's rights, I mean, the other things that people always talk about is corporate punishment in schools. What is the position of the Zimbabwe government on that?
The most recent judgment that we'll refer to in Zimbabwe on corporal punishment is State versus Chokuramba, which outlawed corporal punishment. So this is the judgment that is currently guiding everybody in Zimbabwe as regards administration of corporal punishment, and it has been banned in specific spheres in Zimbabwe. So that is the current position as regards corporal punishment.
So on Wednesday you'll be having an exhibition that usually focuses on the Convention of Children's Rights. Can you tell us, I mean, what really made you to think about this exhibition?
We thank the Swedish Embassy for partnering with us in this exhibition. The CRC at 30, which is because we're commemorating 30 years after it was formed in 1989. So this was, we decided to do it in a big way, involving children and a dialogue. So children will be talking about children's rights, issues that affect them as regards education, right to health, the way they are living, and various other spheres of their lives. So it's something that we look forward to on Wednesday. And I am sure you've already seen the art exhibition, students preparing for our art exhibition, which will be officially opened on Wednesday. So this is what marks the anniversary this year in Bulawayo. And maybe just to highlight that there was a CRC at 30 last year in Harare with almost the same setup. But Bulawayo has also had a diverse and a fresh appeal to it. So we look forward to Wednesday's activities.
What work are you doing in promoting the children's rights in Zimbabwe?
Well, as Legal Resources Foundation, we're a human rights NGO. We specifically target children in various aspects. So start off with the legal awareness or legal education. As an organization, it is our duty to conscientize children in schools, out of school, anybody who is termed a child in Zimbabwe. We try and raise awareness on various laws in Zimbabwe, because there are various pieces of legislation in Zimbabwe that speak to children's rights. So that is one of our key aims. Then also in schools, we have what we call peer legal advisors. So we're saying one of the days where we have legal advisors being adults, we also want children to have other advisors whom they're able to look up to, where they're able to get basic information and also dispense that information to other students in the school. Then in terms of our litigation component, because you know Legal Resources Foundation is an NGO of lawyers again, we assist juveniles in all cases. So it doesn't matter whether they have committed armed robbery or any criminal offense. As an organization, we've seen that it's actually better to try and remove a child from the prison system at an early stage than having them to go through the prison system, because by the time that they are released, they have graduated into hardcore criminals. And also, it is our aim as an organization that no child should go into the court system or through the trial system without legal representation. Of course, there are challenges here and there, because in terms of resources, in terms of human resources, it is at times difficult to really ensure that every child in Zimbabwe goes through the court with a legal representation of their choice. So that is some of the work that is key amongst us. Then also is the legal resources from our name, and the resources part. We produce material that is targeted at children. So we produce audiobooks, web-based material, and your hard copies, children's rights pamphlets, any material related to children in awareness raising.
For someone who has been doubting whether to come to this exhibition or not, why is it important for people to come and see this exhibition?
I'm sure most exhibitions that have been done at this gallery have been done by adult artists. This one is a different exhibition altogether, because all the work that will be displayed and exhibited on Wednesday has been done by children. Some of it has been done on the premises, some elsewhere, but it is a children's event in line with commemorating the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So if you have time to come, please come through and see. Some of the artwork will be displayed on the walls of this beautiful gallery, and we'll have the children there on Wednesday as well.
That children are an important section of any population, and for us as an institution, we are excited to be curating an exhibition to focus on the vulnerable in our society, and children are that section that is vulnerable, and an exhibition that then spotlights the Convention on the Rights of the Child is an important engagement on our part, because the desire is to then raise awareness among members of the public, particularly those who violate children's rights, to come through and glean those key messages that are portrayed in the various articles. So for us, we see it as a strategic opportunity to use art, as a leverage towards spreading positive peace messages. And the other exciting element is that this is our first exhibition for the year, and normally the first exhibition tends to receive concerted attention. So we think then this will set the tone for all the other exhibitions for the rest of the year. So we respect children, we do programming on our own for children, so this builds on our existing passion for children.
You have already mentioned that this is the first exhibition of the year. I mean, for someone who's coming to the gallery, and what can we expect? What do you have any, I mean, some of these artists that we've done here, are they school children? Are they out of school children? What's the profile of the artists who will be exhibiting?
Well, this is inherently a photography exhibition. It's a series of pictures which depict various themes, articles as captured in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Then, to foster that element of participation, we have today a workshop where learners from King George and Ndebele are also making their own personal interpretations of what rights mean to them. Then we will translate some of those drawings and paintings onto the boards that we're using as the exhibition. So principally the exhibition is a photography exhibition, various pictures showing different elements. And there are also explanations in terms of what the various articles mean. So even if you can't read the picture, we'll be able to tell a story. So for us, it's all about photography interfacing with children's rights.
So basically this is using art as a form of communication. And from a gallery point of view, do you think art is very effective in communicating?
Certainly, you know, this speaks to the philosophy that we have internally, where we want to be socially relevant beyond art for art's sake. To what extent can we leverage art to also promote awareness on different elements, socio-economic and political? So for us, this is a typical exhibition where art is being instrumentalized. We are using it not just for its sake, but to propagate messages, and in this case, children's rights. So we will be having more of such instrumental exhibitions going forward, and we'll also balance this out with the typical conceptual art. So it should be a mixed bag, because the desire is to have local relevance and social relevance.
And lastly, how long is this exhibition going to go on?
It's 1 month. It will run for 1 month minimum, depending on audience reaction. Sometimes we then extend if there is demand. But one thing that we're certainly contemplating is where we engage schools, deliberately go to them, invite them, and then invite our other partners, the Legal Resources Foundation, to be the tour guides. You know, we have our own internal tour guides, but we think it's an exciting dimension to then bring those with legal perspective to serve as tour guides and see what comes out of that in terms of the learning experience, because it's an educational exhibition. So for starters, we'll give it a month and see if there is demand, then we can extend it accordingly.
That was a very informative interview with the Swedish ambassador, but I also talked to the director of the art gallery, Butho, Nyathi, as well as the advocacy officer from the Legal Resource Foundation, talking about the work that they do when it comes to children's rights. So I know a lot of people, always say spare the rod, spoil the child, but the Swedish ambassador is saying, you know what, you can actually bring up your children and teach them and bring them up without actually beating them. And we know in Zimbabwe we have serious problems of child marriages, children that are being beaten up, children that are being, arrested and thrown in jail. And they're saying, why can't we find ways of bringing up our children, of disciplining our children without actually using violence or force? So I hope we have learned a lot, and the government of Zimbabwe, I hope also they're going to do a lot of things to try and making sure that our children have access to health, our children have access to education, so that we can bring an informed nation that respects human rights. My name is Zenzele Ndebele, but before I go, don't forget that on Wednesday we'll be having the official opening of the exhibition on the Convention of Children's Rights at the Art Gallery, and I encourage you to go and see this exhibition, because it's quite important that we know about children's rights. We see what our children are doing. My name is Zenzele Ndebele. Till we meet again tomorrow, have a good day.